Alrighty guys, I'm going to attempt to install this bull bar from Black Horse Off-Road on the ML63 over here. Just got this thing powder coated in gloss black, but this should fit on any basically a 164 chassis ML, 350, 550, 63, whatever. It should fit without much of a problem. Here we've got some brackets and instructions, but I'm going to walk through each step of how to install this thing on this car. Hopefully without having to jack the car up, I'm just going to put the airless suspension up and then take the lower tray off, and we should be good to go to install it. Alrighty, I've got all the hardware laid out here. So we've got the 6 M12x35 hex bolts over here, the 2 M12x40 bolt plates. Here we've got the M6x30 hex bolts as well, and then of course all the hardware associated with these bolts to properly install things. So I've got my ML raise and air suspension right now, but what we can do now is we can slowly take off this front plate over here, the little plastic guard, bunch of 10mm bolts. Kind of annoying to do, but not a huge deal. Some of the bolts are pretty long, so it is kind of annoying, but like I said, not a huge deal whatsoever. We're just going to take this plate off, put it aside, we can kind of work below there. Alright guys, so we basically set up the bracketry for one side of the car. It was pretty complicated. I got to say the instructions were helpful, but not the best they could be. So you should take the fender liner off as well. It gives you a lot more clearance, and it's pretty much impossible to do without taking it off, so I do recommend doing that. If you have a wide body car like a 63, like this one over here, it is kind of annoying to get it past this lip over here, so keep that in mind for reinstallation and installation as well. But once you get it out, it makes life a lot easier. So essentially what you do is behind there's a body bushing for the front subframe. I'll show you guys that in a moment, but you have to remove a little rubber grommet sort of piece like this that's behind the body bushing, and then you slide this little guy, this little bracket, into place. So you put it in a little hole, and essentially this part will be sticking out, the threads will be sticking out of the hole, but the two little ends of the bracket will be making contact with, I think, whatever frame rails those are, and it'll be kind of sandwiched in there via the actual frame and the little piece itself. I think that's actually how the OEM bull bar attaches as well. But essentially what you do is that goes in like so. Say you have this like that, the frame goes around it, then you have this bracket. Now it doesn't matter which side goes where. I'll give you guys a little more details when I'm under the car, but essentially this is the passenger side one. The driver's side one is a little bit different. They both angle outwards, and then this piece goes forward. This piece will attach to the actual bull bar, but for reference it does angle out and then in a little bit as well. And essentially you're going to have this thing that goes through this hole, and imagine the frame is sandwiched in between. And then you're going to want to have a large washer like this, followed by a spring washer like this, and then of course a bolt to go on top. I believe this is close to 18 or 19 millimeter. I'll give you guys details in a moment. Alright, so here we are on the passenger side of the vehicle. You can see the body bushing right here with your red line across it, and then the grommet is right there. Got the fender liner off so you can see much easier. Just going to pull this guy out like so. Here I'm holding the bolt bracket over here, so you can see we've got the bracket side facing up. Now we simply have to slot it into the grommet area, kind of like that. Doesn't really matter which way you do it, because it's going to be pinched in there anyways with the bolt. But as long as you kind of have it looking like this, somewhat sturdy in there, we can now get the other bracket with the taped up washer and lock washer, and then go ahead and put that on there. You can kind of see here I've taped down the washer and then the lock washer above it to the actual bracket. This way when we put it above the bolt plate, we can actually just go ahead and use this guy over here with our hand and just simply hand tighten it on there, and then we can use that guy, the 19 millimeter with the extension, to get a little bit more leverage on the bolt. At this point I've gotten the bracket loosely in there with that 19 millimeter, and it worked just like I said. Next thing we have to do is get the T-bracket in here. So all we have to do is remove this little 10 millimeter screw that kind of attaches the radiator support together. Don't worry, this one screw is not going to make the entire thing fall. There's plenty of screws holding it together anyways. So when we take this one out, we can go ahead and put the T-bracket in, and then use the longer bolts with the washers and nuts. Already got the T-bracket in there nice and loose. You can see the two new screws are nice and loose in there with the bolts and the nuts. And now you may be thinking, why is there a nut here? This thing already had a little screw point in there. There was no need to put this, and you're probably right, there is no need to put it, but I figured there's no reason not to put it. But it came with it anyways in the kit, and I figured it's not going to do any harm by having it there. So got these two guys in there nice and loose. Same with that side. this coolant hose right here in the 63 at least. I'm not sure if it's the same on all the MLs or 164s, but just unclip it from the little plastic clips temporarily while you're installing it. It does give you a little bit more room. And then we can reinstall those once we're done. So now it's time to get the actual sport bar or bull bar, whatever you can call it, or even brush guard, and attach it right over here. Probably a good time to mention that if you have parking sensors, they will probably not work. In fact, they will not work with the bar attached, as I believe it blocks off some sensors over here. So they will be going off, so I recommend just turning them off the second you get in the car. Alrighty guys, everything pretty tight. Use some medium strength blue Loctite on there. And I've got it nice and tight and snug with the lower part of the bar and the chassis mounted portions. So as you guys can see, basically you want to do these two first before you even touch the one with the T-brace. So do these first, really loose. Then loosely do that one at the end after you've done all four. And once you've got those on and all loosely tightened, you can kind of position it how you want to. There's a little bit of room to move it forwards, backwards, up, down. Not a huge amount of motion, but you can have a little bit of adjustment. Then after that, you're going to want to tighten the actual bracket of the car, the frame rail itself. Get it as tight as you can with your hand. I would say with a nice big ratchet like that, a 1/2 inch drive. You could use an impact wrench, but I really don't think that's necessary with the thread locker. I mean, this thing is on there. If I move it, it'll move the car, so that's what you want. So once you've gotten those ones in the chassis tightened up, you can go ahead and tighten all of them on the actual bracket, the 3 on the bracket, including the T-brace itself. So you have washer, a lock washer, the bolt obviously. Other side is nut and washer. So there's 3 on each side, making up 6. So do all of those next, and then after that's done, you can go ahead and do these over here, the ones that went on the radiator support. You can go ahead and tighten those ones up. And once you're happy with the positioning and all that, I must say the 63 and the 550s will be very tight. I think it is actually touching this part right here, but it's not going to be a big deal, as it should not be moving anywhere really. But yeah, at this point I'm going to put back the fender liner. Hopefully there's no cutting needs to be done. I do think there'll be a little bit of trimming that needs to be done with the under panel though, under tray. They didn't mention it, but I'm going to see if there is going to be anything needs to be done. I do think there will be a little bit, but hopefully not too much. But anyways, I'm going to get to that, and then I'll show you guys when you need to cut the lower panel. Alright, so unfortunately the fender liner does not quite fit toward the bottom, so I could trim a little bit of it off, but I realized that I was still better anchored from the top and from one point at the bottom of the bumper, so I'm just going to leave it. Now that may mean maybe it'll rub a little bit on like full lock. Not quite sure. Basically the bottom anchor in the bottom corner cannot fully connect because the bracket for the bull bar is in the way, so I just kind of have it hanging there, but it's fully connected at the top and there's one point at the bottom, so I think we should be just fine. And also the little plastic rivets are in place as well, so I think with all those intact it should be fine. We shouldn't really have an issue. But for this guy over here, this actual center bottom piece, essentially, so this is the front of the car, pretend, right? That's the rear of the car, and that faces the rear at least. And the brackets for the bull bar are like right here. So the fender liner would typically bolt in like right over here. So I think I have to cut like a strip right along here, and then the same on that side. So I've got a nice clean cut right over here. You can see I've got that line right there. I'm gonna just copy and paste that for right over there. And there we have it, guys. It is fully installed. I'm really happy with that. That center piece now fits perfectly, little under tray. With that trimming of the 2 little pieces on the side, it now fits perfectly, and don't have to worry about that anymore. But yeah, this thing is pretty cool. I think it adds some character to the ML63 front end. Looks pretty neat, I think, and I'm really glad I put this on before our trip. You know, any little mishaps, small things on the road and stuff like that, it'll give you an extra layer of protection. It is chassis mounted, of course, so that does have that going for it. It also has a little skid plate at the bottom. So if for some reason you were off-roading your ML, you could protect yourself from rocks, protect the oil cooler especially, so that's cool. Mainly for aesthetics, I think, in my opinion, for me at least, I quite like this a lot, and looking forward to taking some cool pics with it. And yeah, that is it for this video.